Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us with this awesome webinar about interviews, everything that we can learn about interviews, how to prepare for them, how to get the most out of them, and everything that I haven't told you yet that Adam is going to tell you more about. Adam is recommended to us by a recruiter, actually, that I approached to ask for some information. Normally, we have a recruiter always coming and join us to tell about the latest tech information, tech interview information, and he recommended us to contact Adam. So I'm very excited to have him join us and tell you a bit more about himself and how we can help us. Before we kick off, though, I just wanted to let you guys know we have a Q&A section in the bottom. Please put all your questions in the Q&A section so we can go through it at the end of it. And I think that's it. We have about an hour, so I'm just going to mute myself. And Adam, you go ahead, take it away.
Sick. Okay. Yeah, I'm Adam. Scream at me if you can't see my slides as well, or wave at me. But okay, sick. Okay. So yeah, I'm Adam. And I'll talk about anything and everything about interviews and getting into the software industry. Most importantly, what we'll be talking about. I'll talk about finding a job or the job, whatever you want to call it, nailing the interview, as well as like things that I wish I knew at the start of my career, that I thought I'd like to know or would have been helpful. And like, why would you like to listen, or why you should listen to me, or at least a little bit. Right now I work for Bank as a staff software engineer. I've been working working in software for about 13 years. I started working as a software engineer by accident, really. I don't have a degree in computer science, and the degree that sits behind me here is in networking and security. And my degree had like a total of 3 classes involving programming. But the rest of it after that was learning on the job, as well as off the job as well. And across my career, I've been a junior engineer 3 different times. I've led teams and worked at some pretty neat places, I think. I also run a education business where I coach other engineers on new skills and career progression and landing new jobs as well. So just we can dive straight into it. So finding the job, probably the funnel, or the top part of it, top part of the funnel. And over the course of your career in software, you'll likely be job hunting every few years. This is how things work usually. The average tenure of a software engineer here in Melbourne, last I checked, is somewhere around 1.5 to 2.5 years. This means that job seeking and interviewing is a skill in of itself, that needs to be developed and maintained. And so resumes need to be kept up to date, networks need to grow, and you need to be able to pick jobs or companies that serve you most. That's most important. And so the first thing that recruiters or hiring managers see are resumes. And there's a lot of advice out there about resumes, and a lot of the advice is trash. The advice that works consistently is to keep your resume simple, easy to read, and provide like very clear evidence to why they should reach back out to you after you submit your resume. I provided an example of a resume here at the top. That's a link. I'll make sure everyone gets the slides and everything afterwards, so you can follow the links and all that sort of stuff. I've used this resume for the past 10 years, the same format, and it consistently works. Feel free to steal it if you like. Excuse me. And the first golden rule of writing a resume is don't include your photo. Don't include a photo on your resume. I've reviewed a lot of resumes over my course of my career, and people do it from time to time. Often, find like juniors doing it as well. It's valuable space that you could be used for like a link to your LinkedIn or GitHub, or display more projects that you've worked on, or something else. So don't include a photo. And the second golden rule is don't include your address either. You don't want your address sitting in like a recruiter's database somewhere or something like that. People can also, unfortunately, form biases based on where you live. And it's unfortunate, and it needs to change. And until it does, don't put it on there. And the next rule is that your resume is marketing material. Um, it needs to be based in reality, but it's your chance to market yourself as best as you can. And like if we look at the examples here, they're saying the same thing, but they're both based in reality. But one demonstrates the outcomes of your work like far more clearly. The first doesn't provide any detail of why they should care about like why you shipped project X. The second demonstrates clear outcomes and it shows me, the person reviewing your resume, that your work was a direct contribution to driving conversion and all that sort of stuff. Um, and if you're just starting out, you'll see you can still use the same strategy. For example, if you've developed a WebSocket server from scratch in your own time, you can write it on your resume like this. Some examples down the bottom there. Seriously, if I had a junior engineer submit a resume with examples of their work and a URL I could go to interact with it, and it was written like this, they'd instantly be in the top 1% of applicants. Next, cover letters are a thing that you have to do from time to time. And similar to resumes, there's a lot of advice out there, and a lot of it's questionable. The best advice I can give you is to include the hiring manager's name. This is the person running the interviews. Maybe it could be the recruiter, or sometimes you can find the hiring manager on LinkedIn because they'll post about the role there. Next, it's important to remember that you don't need a unique cover letter for every application. I provided an example as well. I make minor updates every time I job search. I mention new skills or different companies as that changes. And I replace the highlighted sections with the hiring manager's name and the role I'm applying for in the company. And it consistently works. You can think of your cover letter as an elevator pitch, as it shows your communication skills, most importantly, your experience, and then your ability to get people interested in your skills. Yeah, they're a marketing tool, just like resumes. The next thing to consider as you start looking for jobs is networking and recruiters. The first 5 years of my career were based around applying for a job, going through an interview process without knowing anyone that worked at the company I was applying for. After that point, though, I started building my professional network by attending meetups or giving talks, both in and out of work like this, and connecting with people on LinkedIn. And since then, in nearly every job I've had, I've been able to get a warm introduction or a genuine referral into a company. A warm introduction and a genuine referral dramatically increases your chances of getting a job. Being at the start of your career means your network might be a bit smaller to start with, but that's okay. It's a great time to start growing it. I'm a very introverted person, so the idea of going to an event after work to talk to people makes me sweat a whole bunch. So networking can be done via LinkedIn. Odd post about what you've learned or staying in touch with people you've worked with or met in class is a great way to start building a network. And lastly, recruiters are a big part of the industry. They'll help you land jobs, and they'll help you when you need it most if you suddenly need a job. And sometimes you can get a lot of spam from them. It's nice to be in demand, but it can be a lot sometimes. But be nice, they're really good relationships to have and maintain. And I found that when I job search, I've always found there's a lot of pressure to find the job, such as like finding a companies whose purpose aligns with mine, or that I wake up every morning and I'm driven to work for this company or something like that. But every job doesn't need to be the job. At the start of your career, it could be a better long-term play to simply get into the industry than nail like a highly competitive position at a well-known company. More power to you if you have, or you're going to like excellent work. However, like getting into the industry and getting some industry experience is of the highest priority. I think, at least when you do find the job, hopefully you do at some point, stay put for a little while. I know I said the average tenure is between a year and a half and 2.5 years. That means that engineering problems that people experience are usually within that time frame, right? That means that the scaling problems that occur 3, 4, or 5 years after you ship something typically aren't experienced by the people that wrote it. So you can get you can get an advantage over others if you stay for that long and see those scaling problems. And if you manage to get some promotions or advancements while you're there, it demonstrates your ability to learn and grow. And striking a balance between knowing when to stay versus when to go is a personal choice, of course, but don't be scared to do either. Um, so next, we'll be going through everything everything you need to nail the interview. I've also included a guide to technical interviewing, and this is a guide that I hand out to my mentees. It's aimed at mid-level software engineers and up. So don't sweat if you can't like tick every box. The main thing is that you're simply aware of some of the topics. So this is a typical interview process for tech companies. Of course, it differs from like company to company, but the process will look similar to this. There's going to be a phone screen. There'll be some coding interviews where you'll do some coding, a behavioral interview where you'll talk a lot, and then offer stage if you're successful, which hopefully you are. And a phone screen will be with the hiring manager or recruiter. They'll ask you some initial questions about your experience. They'll likely also ask some initial technical questions. The point of the phone screen is to screen out candidates who don't match the initial criteria of the role, and make sure the high notes of your resume match up. The coding interview is exactly what it sounds like. You'll do some coding. Sometimes you do it on your own. Sometimes you do it with someone. Sometimes both. And the behavior interview, there are interviews where you'll get asked questions about culture and how you like to work. And this is where you'll get asked questions such as how do you handle conflict and questions like that. And last is the offer stage, that's where you can negotiate salary if that's something that you feel like you need to do. And so what to expect in an interview for both coding interviews and behavior interviews. Unfortunately, people still ask like trick questions. And they do this in both style interviews. They're misguided attempts at eliciting signals they're looking for. Even though this sucks, it should change. It's a game that we have to play while you're applying. You'll typically see this at larger companies such as like Kohl's, Atlassian, ByteDance, Google, and so on. And the only way to handle these is to be prepared and know your subject matter for the interview really well. Subject matter could be like JavaScript if it's a JavaScript position, or a Python, or Django, or like whatever it is. The high notes that I mentioned in the job description are what you should be focusing on. And lastly, don't be afraid to ask the interviewer questions. Like, you're going to be stuck working with these people for 35 to 40 hours a week. And so it's important that you know who you're about to go and work with as well. Some important interviewing tactics that you can take into interviews, though. It's the first tactic that I like to try and remind myself of is that an interview is also a marketing exercise. Like, ensure everything you say is based in reality. But you want to present the version of yourself you'll be bringing to work, whatever version that is. Most people get sweaty and nervous during interviews, like me. I do, certainly. And using the STAR method will make you stand out amongst most everybody that interviews. And it sounds kind of like ham-fisted and corny to use the STAR method while you're talking. But seriously, I've been on the interviewing panel so many times, and I've seen so many people get flustered, which is okay. It's normal. I get flustered too. But the candidates that stand out are the ones that can apply a framework like the STAR method or something similar to their answers. So their answers are clear and concise. And if you're unfamiliar, it stands, for situation, task, action, and result. An example of this, like if someone asked me, tell me about your experience using Google Cloud Platform or AWS, you could respond with, I've used GCP over the last 3 years or something like that. The majority of my experience came from working at X company. In my case, it came from working at a company called Center Group. And you could say quite literally, the situation was, we were transitioning from Kubernetes to Google Cloud Functions. The task at hand was coaching other engineers on GCP itself, but also porting long-running services to a format that worked in Google Cloud Functions. The action I took was X, Y, and Z, getting people to volunteer, coaching others, and doing direct individual contribution as well. And the result was this thing, and we cut cloud costs by 15%. That's a tremendous way to answer a question, as it gives the person interviewing you lots of stuff to peel through and ask them further questions on. And it's very clear and concise. And lastly, when you do ask the interviewer questions, you should phrase them as if you already work there. That's really great advice. It's actually a social engineering tactic, and it subtly pushes the interviewer to imagine what it'd be like to work with you. It sounds kind of silly, but it works, and you should do it. Use it to your advantage. These are questions such as, what would be the first project I'd work on here? Or would I be working on team X or team Y? How would I collaborate with the ops team, or the support team, whatever it is? Or like, what desk would I sit at? Would I be over there, over here? And each time you ask questions like this, they push the interviewer to imagine what it'd be like to actually work with you, and kind of break them out of this idea that they're just interviewing you. And next, like, obviously, are somewhat probably the more important bits of interviews. There's lots of content about live coding interviews. I don't think I've ever met anyone that actually likes them, but we have to do it. And they typically come in two flavors. I think the second flavor is best, but most will be the first. The first flavor are the arbitrarily complex computer science questions, such as, traverse a directory tree recursively to the in-depth, or navigate a board in the most efficient way with limited moves. And the second flavor that I enjoy are they're grounded much more in reality. When I worked at Zendesk, we asked questions such as, use the Zendesk API to create a UI for Zendesk tickets. And when I worked at Linktree, we asked people to create a music link for a link in bio product. These types of questions are, they're more grounded in reality and more reflective of the work you're going to be doing when you do work there. Another tactic I've seen is companies will take a bug they've had in production, and use that as a live coding interview, and work with you to fix this bug. I've seen that as well. The best way to handle live coding interviews is to practice a whole lot. The best way to get good at programming is to program a lot. So you need to, and live coding or coding interviews in general are a separate skill. And so the tools that I like to use are Advent of Code, which is it's a website. They generally have 25, 26 questions that aren't as heavily based in computer science as the questions that you get from LeetCode. And there's several years worth of these questions. I find them easier to understand, and I find them more approachable. They're often using the same skills that you use for LeetCode questions. I just find them easier to understand. And then the second best one that I like to use is LeetCode itself. But of course, whenever I encounter a concept that I don't know, or something I'm struggling with, feed it through AI, like, ChatGPT, or like whatever, product you like to use. It'll help teach you, or at least give you resources that you can go further and Google with. Everyone else is doing it, so it'd be a shame if you didn't. That's how I get through, tough computer science stuff that I only learn for interviews and then quickly forget. I've actually provided an example of how I approach live coding interviews as well. So you can look it up there, but also, like, some advice I can give you while you're actually in the interview coding: don't stop talking. Whatever part of your brain exists that filters out what you're going to say, remove it for that 45 minutes to an hour. It provides this interview. It provides a glimpse for the interviewer. It provides a glimpse to them of what it's like to work with you. And so you need to pack what that experience is like down into 45 minutes or an hour, however long the interview is. And while you're coding out your solution, do the quickest, dirtiest, simplest solution first. Even if it's like embarrassing or silly, or you think it's not the right solution, getting something out, whether it's, is complete or not, is more important than getting nothing out. Because the idea is they want to know what it's like to work with you rather than um, getting a working solution. Some places do require you to get a working solution, such as like Atlassian and larger companies. But most places, smaller places, will often tell you um, that they're looking to understand what it's like to work with you rather than like getting a hard working solution. And don't forget to ask questions to the interviewer as well to keep them engaged, and give them a genuine experience of what it would be like working with you. And that could be questions such as like, what do you think about this variable name? Or I'm a little stuck here. Do you think I should do X or Y? And they can sometimes give you a hint or something like that. But it's a good way to get the interviewer involved and get them on side as well. Um, at the end of the interview process, there's offers, which is wonderful and exciting. And it's very easy to get like super excited and go straight to a yes, if you're on the phone or something like that. However, you owe it to yourself to take a breather, have a look at the offer, even if it sounds like super duper amazing. You can, if you're on the phone, you can ask for a verbal offer in writing, or verbal offer via email, sorry, or you can write it down yourself, and take a moment, and to compare it against information on websites such as levels.fyi, which list software engineers go there and list the salary that they have at particular companies. If you do choose to negotiate the offer, it's important to know the first person that says a number loses. I think in my experience at least. And there's a number of ways to avoid saying a number. The simplest way is to use a phrase: "The market is telling me that this role is worth XYZ right now, and does that align with your budget?" They may push back for more information, but um, you can increase the firmness in your response and direct them towards the market is telling you that it's worth this much, or so on. And it's also like tangentially, it's also important if a recruiter or a hiring manager at the start of the process ever asks you for what you were previously paid at like a previous software gig or like something like that, never tell them. What they're doing is they're using your previous salary to benchmark the potential offer they're going to give you at the end of the process. And more often than not, it's used as a way to to benchmark their offer, so that if you're successful, if you're being paid 80 grand at this job, they know that they could offer you 95, because that's a significant pay bump rather than offering the 100 that they were prepared to, for example. If they do ask, you can deflect it and say, "I'd rather not mention that. I'd rather keep it focused on what this role is offering. Do you have a pay range for this particular role, or a pay bracket?" Um, and lastly, after the interview and everything like that, or after all the interviewing tactics and stuff like that, I'd like to touch on stuff that I wish I knew at the start of my career. I've been doing this for a hot second, and so there's been plenty of times where I've learned something or I've reflected on something, and I wish that younger Adam would have known that. And so the first one is, learning on and off the job. Learning's core to our sector. There'll always be something you need to learn, and you always not know something. So get very comfortable with that, with both of those. And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to best understand how you learn. The first portion of my career was I was learning a lot on the job. However, after a certain period, I stopped learning as much on the job because I had some experience in my belt, and that was probably about 5 to 8 years. And if you want to, you can try and rely on learning on the job only. But if you have the ability to, and it's accessible to you, learning off the job will make you progress much faster at all stages of your career if you have the opportunity to. Play with new frameworks, explore new ideas, toy with new languages. Programming is the best way to get better at programming. There's only so much that can be learned in books, and things of that nature, and like but hands-on experience is what will set you apart from everybody else. Further, ensure to put all of it on GitHub. I've had mentees say, but I don't think I'll finish this project, this thing, whatever it is. Do I really want to put it on my GitHub? And the answer is always yes. I have over 100 projects on GitHub, and I don't think I've finished a single one. But I know that I've learned at least a little something from each one of them. And I can always point to them later on if I'm interviewing to say that I'm familiar with XY technology or I've worked with it in this way and provide evidence as well. Um, the next one is using one-on-ones to your advantage. It's common for like small-ish to large companies to offer one-on-ones with your direct manager. Um, you can use these to your advantage, or actually, they're typically offered in fortnightly and weekly cycles, and a lot of them will be just talking about everyday stuff during that, whatever is going on with you at work or at home. But oftentimes, you can also talk about, how do I progress from my role to the next role at this company? What skills does the team or company need me to learn? Um, and if your manager is running one-on-ones correctly, it should be a safe space to get feedback and also give feedback as well, to help propel your career. Not all managers are like this, which is unfortunate. But if you have a manager on your side, they can really help propel your career. And so using one-on-ones to ask these types of progression questions is really important. Um, the next thing that I wish I knew is I wish I knew how promotions worked at the start of my career. Um, there was a time in my career where I missed out on several rounds of promotions just simply because I didn't ask. Um, so I wish I knew how they worked. And typically, they're done in two cycles at most companies: one at mid-year, financial year, and then at the end of the year. Sorry. So during the promotion cycle, you and your manager will typically work on a promotion packet, and it's basically a packet of evidence of why you should be promoted to whatever role y'all are working on at the time. Why you should be promoted from junior to mid-level or senior to staff or whatever it is. And people typically have recency bias. So this, you have it, your manager has it, your colleagues and your manager's peers, who are the people that they need to convince that you need this promotion. And don't let that keep you from getting your promotion at all. Don't let that bias keep you back. So you create a brag document. It's a it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a document that lists all of your achievements that you have while working at a particular company. It's a simple document that could just list them out dot point, or you could separate in the headers or however you want to format it. But come promotion time, when you start talking to your manager about a promotion, or you need to provide evidence yourself, you can take this brag document that you have, give it to your manager, and your manager will thank you because it'll make their job a lot easier. And then you also thank yourself once that like sweet pay rise or promotion comes through. And the last thing I wish I knew, I wish I knew more about. I wish I knew more about learning. Everyone who learns stuff has experienced the Dunning-Kruger effect, like especially software engineers. There's a time when you're picking something up. It's tough for a short time, but then it's you get a win on the board. You figure out how to use this library or this function, or you figure out how like MVC works or like whatever it is. And then you try to apply it, enforce, and it gets really bad. It sucks. And that's like what's called the valley of despair. It's very not good. But then eventually you start figuring it out, and then you hit this plateau of sustainability. And it's our job to shorten the distance between what's, affectionately called Mount Stupid to the plateau of sustainability. Shorten that distance as much as you can, just so that you can move through that experience. But you can move through learning something very quickly, because it's, programming is quite accessible nowadays. You can go get degrees or certificates and all that sort of stuff, but it's your ability to pick up new things quickly that separates you out from other engineers and other people in your sector, because we're always going to be learning something. There's always going to be something you don't know. So shortening that distance between those two peaks is ideal. And that's it. Yeah, that's all I had. I'm an open book, so feel free to ask me like any questions that you have, put them in the Q&A. And if you can't think of some examples, here are some examples in my slide. Yeah, really
Do you
anything
want
that
to
you want
go
to ask.
through them?
Sure. Yeah.
We have
Average
some
salary.
questions, but I was just,
Yeah.
anyone else, please pop your questions in the Q&A section and we'll go through them. But yeah, it would be good if you can answer these.
Yeah.
You've got them listed here already anyways, right?
Sick. Yeah, I can I'll start with these ones on the slides and I'll go over to the Q&A. But yeah, does that work? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. I'll help you with the
Sick.
Q&A.
Excellent. Yeah, average salary for a junior engineer, between 75 and 90,000, depending on where you're going. That's what I've found, I guess. Is some places 60.
Still?
Still, yeah, surprising. You get smaller, or you get less offer, or sorry, a smaller offer from smaller places, of course. And the larger places, they typically pay above market rate. So if you're going to work for like a ByteDance or Google or those types of places, but generally speaking, that's where I've found the market sitting at the minute, which is nice. I'm glad. Junior engineers are great.
That's awesome. But do you think that counts for graduates as well? Because I have not been experiencing the same in the last
Sure.
2
For
years.
graduates, maybe. Yeah, it could be my sheltered experience amongst working for like a Sydney enterprise, but then also going to work for a bank. That could be.
Banks pay well, I think.
Banks. I was shocked that banks have lots of money. Yeah. But yeah, so it obviously it pays to use resources such as like levels.fy or Glassdoor. Talk to your friends in the sector as well. Make sure that if it's lining up with their experience, then it's usually going to be above board. So ask your friends. That also helps.
Yeah. So just to add on, my experience is
Mm,
between 60 and 70 right now with the
okay,
current market, because there is, there's more candidates than there's jobs at the moment, and companies are definitely using that
totally.
to keep the salaries down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Cool. No, that's good advice. And that's a good point that companies will use, demand and all that sort of stuff to adjust their compensation strategies. It's a very good point to make. Next one is like, what are common life coding questions? A really popular one is traversing directories, or put differently, traversing a parent-child relationship, to in depth, and in just being any depth. Or another way to put it is also, if you have a tree, finding the grandparent of a node in the tree. Um, this is where learning things like binary trees, and all those types of algorithms help out a lot. Another one is interacting with APIs as well, like using the fetch API if you're familiar with the JavaScript one, or whatever the equivalent in Python is as well. Yeah, a lot of live coding comes down to like computer science fundamentals, and so getting comfortable with that sort of stuff, at least for the interview, helps out a lot. Another one I get asked quite often is like, is it okay to job hop? And mostly, the obviously it's a personal choice how long you stay somewhere, and like your how you're being treated and what you think is important and all that sort of stuff. So it's a personal choice to make. But I know plenty of software engineers that have year and a half, year long stints at places, and they move on. But I also know software engineers that have been places for 10 plus years because they really like it and it works for them. And so I think if you have sub 1 year stints, multiple ones at places, you can people will start to ask questions. But a year and a half plus, you're pretty much keeping up with the rest of the industry there. And one I've been asked before as well, have you ever had an offer rescinded for negotiating? No, never. The most that's happened is that they've said no when I've tried to negotiate, and that's it. Like I still have the job, I still work there. So yeah, the worst that can happen when you try to negotiate is they say no, and that's okay. And then I answered, what do you wish what do you wish you knew at the start of your career? All the stuff I mentioned before, but I wish I knew how to learn a bit quicker. It would have made it a lot less painful to learn new things, but that's okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are teaching you guys to learn really
Yeah.
quickly, because that's what the boot camp's all about, right?
Yeah.
We have quite a lot of questions in Q&A, so we'll try to run through them quickly. I'll read them out.
Sure.
If you can answer it, then we can go from there. So the first one is, can you tell if the applicant used AI for their resume and cover letter?
Great question. At Up, we don't use we don't use we're small enough that we don't have to use HR software like a fancy screening software or anything like that. There could be features in those that identify if you've used AI to write cover letters or your resume, but uh, personally, like I would I'd be surprised if most candidates don't use at least a little bit of AI to help with the resumes or cover letters. Like that could be like Grammarly. That's technically an AI to help you wordsmith it. Um, try to use something like that to replace words or find find different words to use. Try not to get ChatGPT or equivalent to just spit out the whole thing for you. Then that's not going to be good. But try writing it all yourself and then replacing bits and pieces as you need.
Yeah, I agree. I find it very handy for things like your summary or your personal
Mm,
profile, because it's always like, okay, yeah, oh gosh, you have to write about yourself. What am I good at? What can I offer
yeah,
you?
100%.
And so ChatGPT is a really good one for that. And exactly, don't copy and paste what it says. That's just a start, and then start refining it and take out all the extra words because ChatGPT adds on all these words that you would never use normally.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah. Next question. How long do you usually have to answer live coding questions? What would you do if you are just generally stuck and have no clue what to do?
Um, yeah, good question. Normally, depending on the interview style, 45 minutes is usually what's given because then some companies allow 15 minutes at the end to talk about what's gone on or your answer or for you to ask questions. Um, but if you get stuck during an interview, which has happened to me, like you just can't answer it, just say like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this, and I think I'm stuck. Could I have some help so that I can then show you what I can do?" Just be honest. The interviewer will know if you're stuck. They're in the room with you, or metaphorically speaking as well. Yeah, just be honest. That's the best policy.
And that's it. The interviewer will know. So then you can show, how am I going to get myself out of this situation without putting myself in a worse situation, as in, yeah.
Yeah,
So, and exactly, use this star method for things like this. Okay, just word it out loud. This is the situation. This is what I've done so far. This is actions is not working. I'm not really know what to do next. So can you help me so I can get to the result?
absolutely.
I think that
Spot on.
that yeah, that helps a lot. Next question. I have a lot of concern that my career background is a completely different sector, health. So I do not have an established LinkedIn or software background. Will this put me at a severe disadvantage during interviews?
No, as a broad answer. I don't think anyone starting out in the software industry has a software background. Like maybe they have an IT background if they did, IT help desk or, something like that. But if it's, there's lots of other people that are going for their first software job. And so they don't have backgrounds either. And actually, we have a funny trend
Everyone,
at, yeah,
everyone in this course is come from a different background.
yeah, exactly. And I think we have a funny trend at Up where there's actually a funny number of people coming from health and it's their first engineering job. We have like two dentists and a couple registered nurses and stuff like that. So don't feel discouraged just because you're coming from like a very different sector. Not at all.
And sorry, to add on to that again, that's what the partnerships team is going to help you with as well at the end of your course. So we have the placement program where we try to find companies that match what you are looking for, but also what you have in your previous background. So if you have a health background, let's see if we can place you at a health tech company, right? Because it's going to be super advantageous for you to have that. And with LinkedIn, we help you with that as well. And so don't worry too much about it because, like Adam said, most people come from different areas, and all the other students are as well. Next question.
Mhm.
Are there stable jobs that last years?
Um, There used to be. I don't like, you know, I can't future cast. I fucking hope so. But of course it helps to attach yourself to companies that are stable. Those it could be industries like banking or investing. Oh, thanks for that reaction. It could be, yeah, things like that. It's all like it's choosing a job is more than just like looking for a salary or that type of thing. If you if stability is something that you really want, then maybe going for the seed round startup maybe isn't the correct choice. Um, go for an established company that's been around for a very long time. Um, that would be my advice. That was a long-winded answer. Yes and no, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but even like the big giants like Microsoft or whatever, they're not immune either, because they are easily like, okay, we're just going to
Mm,
shed this many percent of our staff. So yeah, the middleman is the one you're looking for. Like the
yeah.
mid-sized companies are the ones to go for.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, the mid-side companies are the ones that are probably most stable because they're not so big that you're just like a cog in the machine. And it's not super tiny so that like everything is hinged on like the next week of sales or something like that.
And they often don't depend on funding as well, which also makes a
Mhm.
big difference. Or as in not all of them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. How long on average have you seen someone take to land their first job?
Um,
That
I
depends on
can't.
the time of a hey, but now with
Yeah,
yeah.
that's exactly right. Yeah. I can't speak for first job. The people that I mentor, they're typically at least one or two jobs in to their career. Um, but I've had several mentees land jobs within a month, sometimes two, depending on how long companies take to get back. And I know that in my own job searching that I did within the last year, um, if you try your best to treat job searching as a as a full-time job, that type of thing, as much as you can. Of course you're still working your actual full-time job and got other responsibilities, but if you put a lot of effort into it, um, yeah, you can get far very quickly, but of course things still take time with companies. So
I have my first interview coming up, and I've been looking at some things they might ask. Could you elaborate on what an elevator pitch is and how should I answer?
good. Yeah, another good question. Gee whiz. An elevator pitch, I guess, like at the start of interviews people typically ask you, like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Yeah, which, being
The question, that's a question that's always the same. The first question, very first
yeah.
question.
Yeah, 100%. Um, and I'm the type of person that likes to also think about some things that people might ask or even write out a script, and that type of thing. Um, Using AI in that case can be helpful. Don't, read the script from AI verbatim, because then you'll sound like a robot. But you can punch in your experience, things that you've worked on, projects that you've done, and things like that, and it can help you come up with you know 4 sentences, 3 sentences that summarize that, and you can wordsmith it yourself. And I find doing that, writing out a script at least, helps take all the awkward feelings that I have out of the situation. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
And then we have how much or how hard will live coding questions be for a junior, total noob like us?
um, they're not going to ask you. They won't ask you. I can't imagine they would ask you to like design a cloud architecture or work, use the AWS constructs and things like that out of the gate. But you should expect, depending on where you're interviewing, that's important to keep in mind as well. If it's a larger company, you can expect questions that are um, grounded in like generalized computer science fundamentals, such as balancing a binary tree, creating a graph, things of that nature. But if it's like medium or small, you'll often get questions that are um, grounded in reality for them, that things that they do every day. And it could be making a request to a remote API and then displaying that data in HTML. Or it could be reading a CSV file and then displaying that data in the terminal, and then writing tests for that sort of stuff.
And just from my experience to add on to that, they
Mm.
know you are a graduate. So they're not going to give you the most difficult things anyways, because they know you won't be able to do it. Often what I've seen as well is like they provide you a whole, like a sheet of code and they tell you, okay, find the faults, or, you know, what is not right in here, or what can you see? And is that's a very common actually. Just ask, is everything right in here, or what can you see? Just explain to me what it is and what it does. Yeah, just to see how you interpret things, and then they're going to also see how you problem solve, because that's the main thing that they're looking
Mm.
for. How are you going to solve this problem? And is that going to be right for us? Can we work with that? Can we help you with that? Can we train you, or are you no, not, you know, not right for us? So
Yeah, exactly.
next question. What would be the best approach if you don't really know how to answer a problem in coding interviews? I think we already touched on that a
Sure.
little
Yeah.
bit.
A little bit. Yeah. But I think in most or almost all of the interviews that I've done, or live coding interviews I've done, I don't know the answer straight away. Um, it's a matter of um, sometimes it's a matter of like writing some code or asking some questions up front to get some clarification, and writing some code and seeing what comes out. Um, yeah, in my experience as well, in my experience at least, I often haven't like known the answer straight away. It's come to me during the interview or through like plugging stuff out with the interviewer.
Okay, I'm going to go through it a bit quicker now because we have about 10 minutes left before classes start. We still got
Sorry.
quite a
Yeah.
few questions. So, okay. What should we wear for an interview?
Whatever you're going to wear every day at work. Yeah.
I guess, okay, next question. I guess in the example, is it okay to job hop to get experience at smaller companies first and then move to bigger companies?
Totally. Yeah, as long as it's up to you, of course. But learn as much as you can somewhere, and then at the start of your career, and then when you can't anymore or you don't think you can, then move on to the next place, as long as it's the right time.
Um, any tips for building a portfolio? Any projects to aim for or to avoid?
Um, don't create a JavaScript framework. Everyone, there's bajillions of them, but use common technologies to build cool interfaces. It could be like a to-do list, URL shortener, um, re-implementing the WebSocket standard. It's a very small standard and it's Googleable. You can find it. Doing that is very cool as well. There's lots of ideas out there.
Right tips. Thanks. Like you can use it for your projects coming up. Will there be cases that relocating is common?
Um, Depending on where you live in Australia, I've been asked to relocate to Sydney a few. I live in Melbourne. I've been asked to relocate to Sydney a few times, and that's not for me. Um, yeah, it just depends on the type of company that you're applying for. I know that ByteDance and Google and everything, they want people to live nearby. I know some investing firms that get software engineers, they want them to live nearby as well. It's totally company dependent.
There's also a lot of companies that don't want that. It's
Yeah,
yeah, again, dependent on the company. Some companies are fine with you doing it remotely, you know.
totally.
They're getting less and less, but yeah, they are there. Do you find more jobs start to pop up at the beginning of the financial year? I've noticed a lot of jobs have dropped off over the last 2 to 3 months.
Yes. Yeah. Now, yeah, over the next couple months, you'll see more pop up, and then you'll see them disappear towards the end of the year because people go on break and leave and stuff like that. Then they'll start coming back in around mid-February as well. And it kind of, if you think about it, it'll be like this sine graph or sine wave or whatever. Um, they'll come and go.
Yeah, beginning of the year and new financial year, pretty much. I find I see them a bit earlier because some companies want you to start in January straight after in the new year, and they tend to, put in an effort to interview you before the end of the year, uh, before Christmas, before everyone goes on leave, so that you can start a month after with that, then you have your notice period in the holiday period, and they don't have to worry about that, and then you can start straight after the holidays.
That's right.
Oops, that one is done. Hi, Adam. Thanks for all insights you've shared. Wondering about your experience getting your first junior role. How did you know you were ready or knew enough to apply or enter the industry?
Good question. My actual first programming role, I was doing IT support, help desk stuff somewhere. When I was an international student, and I walked past someone's desk and they were doing some Java, and I offered to help, and they were very nice and just gave me the whole thing, and that's how I became a software engineer, and that was it. So I was very lucky in that regard. But the job after that, where I actually had to like apply, go through interview process and everything, um, I didn't know that I was ready. I just swung for the fences, and it worked out. I don't I don't think you'll know when you're ready or anything like that. I don't think, angels will come down and tell you, or you'll get a note or something like that. Yeah, I think just swinging for the fences, um, when you need to is best bet, I think.
All right. Tabs or spaces?
Spaces, but I know it should be tabs because you can figure how wide tabs are in your editor.
Oh. Are all interviews online or some part in person?
Um, it depends on the company. If the company has a remote first culture, it'll probably all be online. If the company has a somewhat hybrid culture, you'll probably be asked to come in for behaviorals. Or if it's like a everyone must be in the office type of situation, then it'll probably be in person.
Next question. Does visa status impact the interview?
Depending on the role, yes. I'm a permanent resident, and that excludes me from roles such as like government positions, defense positions, things working with Five Eyes and stuff like that. So depends, if you're international or if you're on a student visa as well, there's some limitations there as well. Um, yeah, hopefully that helps.
Have you seen people jump to other sectors of IT depending on the market? Like, for example, would web dev still be relevant to trying to break into something like cybersecurity, or if you wanted to broaden your horizons or options?
Yes, yeah, I have had several friends who started out as software engineers, whether it's web dev or game development, and they've gone between them, or they've a friend of mine has also gone from software engineering to cybersecurity as well. Yeah, software engineering gives you a tremendous base to go into other industries in IT.
I find, sorry, 1 second. I
That's
just
okay.
need to quickly, you go and answer the next one. I just quickly need to
Do your
say
thing.
goodbye
Yeah.
and lock off here.
No worries. How many questions should you ask an interviewer about the job? Is there any scenario where we ask too many or too little? There's there's definitely too little. Like you should always ask some. How many questions? However many there's time for. Allow for a natural flow of conversation. Wait for them to get their complete thought out, and consider what they've said and if there's any follow up. Um, if you are in a situation where you're asking questions and there's a good flow of back and forth, um, and the interview goes over time, that's generally a good sign as well. Hopefully that helps. Um, oops. There we go. And then the next one is cracking the coding interview still a relevant book? That's a good question. I haven't read it, so maybe I don't know. Sorry. um, how high are expectations on graduates like us when we first start working? Um, excuse me. They know that you're a graduate or a junior developer. They're not going to ask you to yeah, they're not going to ask you to do some sort of like Nobel Peace Prize level programming, like whatever that is. There'll be lots of pairing with other engineers. There'll be time for you to work on your own and demonstrate those skills that you can problem solve on your own. But there will be lots of pairing with other engineers and hands-on time with other engineers so you can see and learn how to work as well. Do you have any insights on the current IT job market in Australia? Um, a little bit. I think you'd probably get more insights here, since like fingers on the pulse, and like I'm a day job programmer, so maybe. There's I've noticed there's lots of mid-level and senior roles at the moment. But in all honesty, I haven't looked at junior roles very often.
I have spoken to a recruiter last week who actually informed me that mid-level and senior roles are very in demand, and unfortunately not so much for juniors and the higher levels, like, you know, CTO level, because they're too expensive, and juniors, there's lots of them out there. Doesn't mean that you won't be able to find a job. It just means that it might take a bit longer than you initially expected, and we're just going to help you and give you all the tools and tips and things like this, to make you stand out amongst the crowd so that you can get that job, over others.
Nailed it.
Awesome. Okay, I already ticked it off for you. Um,
Okay.
how important are the projects on our GitHub for job applications and interviews?
Over the last 13 years, I've only had to pull up a project on GitHub once during an interview. Like it got me the job, which was super cool, but once over 13 years. So that important. It's more important to have projects up there for yourself so you can learn. Um, yeah, you should do projects so that you become better at software engineering or programming rather than like to get a job.
Do you not find that people look at it though before you're being invited for an interview? Because I heard that they always want to know and they always look at it.
They do look at it. I don't think they would look at your contribution graph, like the thing that's on GitHub, to look for, how often you commit and that sort of thing.
They
Um,
do. Sorry, I've gotten feedback that they do.
really far
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Um, wow. Yeah. So,
Depends on the company, I guess.
yeah, totally. It does. So I think to have projects up there is good because it shows that you're doing it, but to actually like use a project as a submission to get a job, I haven't come across that style of application before.
I think maybe it's the market as well, because there are
Mm,
so many juniors that they're looking at who are standing out. Okay, so GitHub, see who's very active on it. Okay, you've done a lot of it, so I know
mhm,
you're very active in learning. It makes you stand out over others that might not have done much in the last couple of months.
totally.
Um, next one, is putting your face on your portfolio good or not? Well, you said no
On your website,
on your
tremendous.
resume.
Yeah, do anything you want on your website, and you can make it as flashy as you want. On your resume, no.
Opinions are divided
Yeah,
on that one though.
sure. Yeah,
That's okay. Okay. You say no. I say depends.
sure.
I already said
Nailed it.
that in the presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
Next one. Are there remote opportunities too?
Totally. Yeah, they're still out there. They're a little bit harder to come by, which is a shame. I like working remotely. I'm a homebody, but they're still out there. You just have to look a lot harder now, unfortunately.
That's it. Never mind. You answered my question. Roughly
Yes.
what percentage of jobs would be work from home?
No idea. There's not a lot.
No.
A small amount. A lot of places are hybrid now or just totally in office.
Yeah, there's a big push back into the office now. I know we have 1 minute for your classes start. You can all blame me, guys, if you want to stay a bit longer. Tell them that we're running 2 minutes over. Okay, last three questions. Some jobs need a degree. Should I still apply to them?
Yes, 100%. I don't have a degree, and every job I've applied for required one.
There you go. If you're stuck whilst you're working, is using AI okay? Or is it best to try research a solution yourself or ask someone for help?
Um, I would ask someone for help first, then use AI because asking someone for help and formulating questions is a skill in of its own, and that's a good one to learn.
And the last one, where will this recording be available? Charlotte, I am going to upload it into Canvas probably tomorrow. I just have to do it manually because this is a separate Zoom account, not attached to Canvas. Wait for it and it will probably be there tomorrow, but definitely before the weekend. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I know you guys have to run, go to class. And thank you so much, Adam, for joining us as well. I'll make sure to put the recording online. And feel free to send me a message if you have any additional questions. I'll make sure to share Adam's LinkedIn page with you as well, so you can have a look at that if you wanted to connect with him, if you're okay with that, Adam.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
perfect. Awesome. And I'll share the slides with you guys as well. Have a good night,
Sick.
everyone. I'll
Bye.
just. Bye.